I think general perception about this NAR lawsuit is that sellers were unfairly compensating buyer agent representation and could have been saving money. And so I want to break that down because this is literally like what came first, the chicken or the egg kind of situation in my opinion. And I want to talk about what I think this will do to real estate, its future implications, and as a buyer, strategically what you could do to make sure that you are still represented and still getting the best deal. Now, before I get into all of that, I am going to ask you guys to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And if you have any questions, comment below and then shoot this off to a friend or family member that could use this valuable information. Now, for those of you who are new to the channel, hello, my name is Lizy Hoeffer. I'm a residential mortgage loan officer here at Cross Country Mortgage. I've worked in real estate for 22 years and I have seen a lot of different economies, different products, programs, problems. This one's by far the weirdest. And so if you are feeling stressed about buying because of high interest rates or because you don't know what's gonna happen with real estate, I really wouldn't blame you. Look, I'm not an attorney, I'm not gonna claim to be one, but I am a real estate professional and I'm gonna give you my best expert opinion on how I feel this NAR settlement is gonna impact real estate sales. And if I was a buyer or seller in this marketplace, things that I would wanna consider. Now, I just wanna preface the NAR settlement is just a settlement proposal. It hasn't been agreed to, and the Department of Justice is still investigating real estate commissions. So it's fair to say that things could change, but this has made such crazy headlines from real estate agents, from consumers, sellers, politicians. I mean, and there's so much misinformation in my opinion on what exactly happened. So I want to give you historical context on this and just from a business perspective, why you should be represented both as a buyer and a seller and why it benefits both parties. So as a consumer, I think it's super fair to be confused about what it should really cost you to buy or sell a property. I think sellers don't want to overpay things that they don't have to, and now buyers are concerned that there's this additional cost in buying in an already like high interest rate market. And so you have to understand whenever you're making a financial decision, you know, what are the pros and cons and what are the costs to you for this potential savings? And I think that the frustrating thing that politicians and the media have done is that they really talk about the proposed savings to all parties without realizing that sellers become buyers and also are going to participate in this buying cycle, and that adding an additional financial obstacle to a buyer right now is going to make sales even more difficult. And should a buyer forego buyer representation, it creates all kinds of issues with potential liability. I want to break that down for you guys because like I said, again, there might be potential savings, but again, at what cost? So if I were a seller, things that I would want to consider if I'm not going to pay that 6% or, you know, that percentage to listing agents and buyers agents is, does the listing agent that I'm hiring have a plan for attracting buyers to my property? And if I market this on the MLS with no buyer agent commission, am I adding an additional hurdle to potential buyers? And will this limit my visibility for properties? Will this limit the amount of showings? And will this extend my sales process? The longer the sales process, typically the lower the sales price. These are things to consider because that potential savings could end up costing you and what you actually sell your home for. So another thing that a seller has to consider is that if they're buying another property, typically the property that they're upgrading to is more expensive than the house that they're selling. So let's say they decided to forego paying the buyer agent commission on a $400,000 sale. Let's say it's 3%. That would be $12,000. They've saved $12,000, but now they're buying a property. And let's say that property is $500,000, right? Just $100,000 more. They're actually paying $15,000 to be represented by the buyer's agent on those negotiations should they believe that a buyer's agent has value. Now, I'm going to explain all the different reasons why I think buyer's agents have value, but just in general, and that's $3,000 more than they would have paid under the original guidelines. All right, and the last thing I'm gonna say, and again, I'm not an attorney and I'm not a real estate agent, but I am an investor in real estate, is I'm always looking to separate myself from any kind of liability. And when a buyer goes unrepresented into a purchase contract, it is always questionable who is responsible for disclosing and protecting that buyer. And we had a scenario once where a client's home actually burnt down a couple of weeks after close of escrow due to some issues with their electrical box. Because that person was represented by a buyer's agent and had a home inspector, I mean, they could pursue that avenue. But let's say that buyer was not represented by a buyer's agent and didn't know all of the different procedures and policies in place to protect themselves in a contract, like all the inspections they should get, all the disclosures they need to get from the seller and this listing agent. That could, I mean, be an interpretation for another lawyer to then pursue legal action against that seller and against their agent. And so for me, as a seller, I'm always going to be looking for ways to make sure that whoever is on the other side of my contract negotiations is also represented, because it adds that extra protection for me as the owner and the investor, right? That person is doing their own due diligence, that they have their own representation that's giving them all of the different pathways to be successful, and that liability or responsibility or pressure isn't on my side of the negotiation. And so even though people should do their own homework, should do their own investigation, we've now seen here that even though they had representation, they might not have understood. And so it opens up the can to who is liable for all of these things. Buyers, this one is for you. I help primarily first-time home buyers, and I have been startled by the media representation of how this is going to benefit you. And I think that first-time home buyers are the ones that are going to be most impacted by this change, and the ones that are going to end up really paying the price for not being represented. If anyone understands the argument, it's me. I mean, I hear all the time, oh, my agent didn't really do anything. I found my own property on Zillow, they just wrote the contract. And it's like, if you think that your real estate agent's value is only to show you properties, you aren't working with the right professional. And I'm gonna break it down for you because I think it is a huge mistake not to be represented in a financial decision. I would never buy a business, I would never make an investment, I would never buy anything if I didn't have a professional helping me that was an expert in the field. For people who think that they're gonna save money by going to the seller, number one, how is that gonna impact your negotiation leverage? Real estate agents, when they're good ones, will know how to get you into a property and have you walk into equity. A good real estate agent is going to investigate the area, understand the area's appreciation, understand the amenities, and make sure that you are not overpaying for a property. They're not going to let you go, oh, well, you're going to get an appraisal so you know it's worth what you're paying for it. They're going to negotiate a price that has you walking into money. Now, they're also going to help you negotiate your repair costs or improvement costs or just maintenance costs in your contract. They're gonna get you a vetted list of professionals like mortgage, title, insurance, I mean, all kinds of different inspectors, right? So you can save time or at least have a reputable vendor to help you. They're also gonna project manage your contract to make sure that you hit all of your deadlines and that your earnest money is not in jeopardy. They're also gonna prevent you from making poor mistakes like paying over asking price or waiving your contingencies. They're there to protect you. And for people who don't see the value, let me ask you this. You think that the negotiation stops with your contract? What happens if your appraisal doesn't come in at value, or your loan officer can't close you on time, or God forbid something happened to your financial situation and now you're being denied for your loan? Who fights for you when you're underrepresented? And I understand that this is going to be an additional cost, but let me tell you right now, the median closing costs in Maricopa County was over $10,000, and the pay under ask price was about 10%. And so people who are working with agents are walking into equity and also getting lower out-of-pocket costs. That's a substantive reason to be represented, in addition to foregoing issues on inspections, repairs, and then future legal issues. Look, at a certain point with money, when you're really vested in your future success, you see the value of working with professionals because they do save you in time, they make you money, they save you in costs, they prevent future liability, future lawsuits. And that's what we really pay for when we are investors. And guys, I know that there are going to be people who are like, of course she's going to say that, real estate agents need to make a commission, she's in lending. But I think that people who work hard, who provide a really great service, deserve to be paid for it. And I also think that there is a major cost to consumers who are underrepresented unless they have their own background in contract negotiations, in real estate law, right? Or the real estate in general. Because I'm not somebody who goes unrepresented in anything, right? Like if I'm buying a business, I'm being represented by a lawyer. If I'm making a contract negotiation, I'm being represented by a lawyer. If I'm buying a piece of real estate, I'm being represented by a real estate agent. If I'm investing in stocks, I have a financial advisor. I mean, I have a lot of people that help guide me in this process that also prevent future headaches with liabilities and lawsuits that make my financial journey that much more successful. And so, yes, there's going to be so much information, so many opinions on this, but as a buyer and a seller, realize that there are real costs, right, to the savings that you are being proposed right now. And if it was me, I would just make sure that you are vetting the right professionals, because the right professionals are worth their weight in gold. Now, if you have any questions on this, guys, or have any additional feedback, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you guys. Appreciate it, love it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.